We have a packed house tonight, which is really fun. I was telling our two news council members that this is one of the most fun nights when we get to swear in new officers. It is very exciting for us, and we really like it. And the only thing that would make this better, new officers, and I told the chief this, and when we get our new dog, because that always is a real crowd pleaser too. So anyway, this is really wonderful that we have new officers. I'm looking forward to it. So City Clerk Sint, can you start with our, oh wait, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance first. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, council members, City Clerk Sint, can you start with us? It's so exciting.
Councilmember Neblett?
Here.
Councilmember Smith?
Here.
Councilmember Knutson?
Here.
Councilmember Juniman?
Here. Last, right?
Mayor Abrams?
Here.
She always calls me last.
Okay, the first item, approval of our agenda.
I move approval of the agenda.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Knutson. Approval of the agenda. Does anyone want to add anything to the agenda? Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you. I have 3 items. Earth Week, Earth Day, Earth Week, the 6/23 meeting last week, and May 1st.
Okay, and I am going to add the Carol Levin interview for their zip code program, or their segment, I guess it is. I'm going to add the Minnehaha closure. I'm going to add the Rice McCarran cleanup and the Regional Council of Mayor letter. And let's see.
All right.
Dunkin' Donuts. I'm going to add Dunkin' Donuts to it as well. Anyone else have anything? Okay, with that, any further discussion? All those in favor of the agenda?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, let's move on to the approval of minutes. We've got the City Council workshop minutes for Monday, April 8th. And just as a reminder, Councilmember Smith and Councilmember Knutson were not present, and so therefore they'll abstain from the vote.
I move approval of the City Council workshop minutes from April 8th.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Neblett. Approval of the City Council workshop minutes for Monday, April 8th. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Then we have our April 8th, 2019 City Council meeting minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Neblett.
Second, but I have a correction.
Okay, let's hear the correction.
Packet page number 3, under spring cleanup, that's item 2. It should say May 11th, not April.
City Clerk Sint, did we get that correction? Okay, May 1st. Any other corrections? Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, now we move to appointments and presentations, administrative presentations. Council calendar update, City Manager Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Abrams, members of the City Council. The council calendar update is to give you a preview of what is coming up at our upcoming meetings, and also some of the other topics or things of interest that we're working on your behalf. On May 13th, at our workshop, we will hear an update on the Brush Line BRT. We'll have our employee benefit folks, NFP, come and talk to us about what we're looking at for our benefit updates for next year. We'll have some training on the intranet for the council. On May 28th, which is a Tuesday because of the Memorial Day holiday, we'll have a presentation from Ellers and Associates, who are our financial consultants, and they're going to talk about an analysis of the Gladstone redevelopment plan. On June 10th, which sounds so far away, is a preliminary review of the 2020-2025 capital improvement plan. And as you know, we start with the capital improvement plan looking out 5 to 10 years on the capital expenditures that we're going to have to buy purchases of things over $50,000. And that sort of sets the groundwork then for our budget process. So that'll be starting shortly after that. So we're going to be getting in the thick of predicting what we need and looking at what we need for the next year and up to 10 years. Some of the things that we need to work on is scheduling a council meeting on Tobacco 21, the Minnetonka Tree Program, our own tree plan, which we adopted, which mimics the city of Minnetonka's, is almost completed. We're still taking orders, and they'll be delivered in mid-May. We had presentations from our District 622 superintendent. Mr. Love in Public Works is working on a pedestrian safety plan. We completed the vacant building sign removal. In June, we'll be reporting on a couple of new ordinances. One was the on-street parking ordinance, see how that's been working or not working, get a little feedback on that. And our new excessive calls for service ordinance, how many times that has been used and what that looks like for review in June. We are continuing to look at the board and commission's interview process, and as I think I've told you, council, I have been out doing training with all of our advisory boards, and after the training session, I'm asking them for feedback about the interview process, and I've gotten a couple of good ideas from them, which I will share with you. And then we're continuing to work on our rental licensing program. Our next phase is to look at our renters and tenants and see if we can engage them and get their feedback on the new ordinance. The second page is the upcoming community events, and I won't read all of them because there are many. These just goes through primarily April and May, but it does have some of our key things that are happening. We have an all parks cleanup on April 27th, which would be this weekend. We have Maplewood Spring Cleanup, which is our big day at Aldridge Arena, is on May 11th. The May 18th and 20th is our tree pickup for our new tree purchasing program. And this is our big one coming up. We're going to have the Wakefield Open House on June 13th, so people can come see our new community park building. July 10th is the White Bear Avenue Parade, and our favorite on August 6th is National Night Out. And you will be getting updates on those as other things come up. But that's all I have, unless you have other items of interest or concern that you would like to direct to staff.
Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I just want to thank you for the upcoming community events calendar. That's really helpful to have it all in one place. So thank you for
Great.
that. And I'm wondering, I sat down with the Tobacco 21 folks today. I'm wondering if you have any idea when we want to get that scheduled.
Soon.
It's our intention to get it scheduled soon. We're just trying to, it's just agenda management. And at this point, this is a really good way to ask this question. I think we've heard from the advocates. Do you want to bring them back, or I think we know where they're at, right? So we don't need to hear from them again, or do we? I thought we'd invite the business community into a workshop and then have it on an agenda item after that on the council meeting. Does that make sense, or?
You know, do the advocates have any interest in coming back?
Yes.
Then maybe we should invite them back.
To hear from both of them at a workshop or
Yes.
at the meeting?
I think maybe at a workshop.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay. We'll do that.
One other thing I'd like to just add is that I think it's always important when we circle back. When we do something new or a little bit different, it's always good then to evaluate after the fact, how did this work out? Is there anything that we learned? Should we do something different? And I know we're doing that, we've done it on a number of different occasions. I'd like to suggest that we do that with the tree program as well. This is the first time, we're trying this out. We replaced what we were doing before because we weren't, getting enough trees out there. And I think that trying this program, it's new, it's different for us, and is this a success? What do we want to do, if anything, next year? Okay, so if we can add that afterwards, okay, that would be great.
Thank you.
All right, then council presentations. Councilmember Juniman, today is actually Earth Day, and I knew that you would want to be on the agenda to talk about Earth Day. I just knew it.
Thank you. Yes, this is Earth Day, National Earth Day, and this is also means that it's Earth Week. So if you haven't thought about it or you haven't carried anything out yet, find some kind of a project in your neighborhood, on your street, or even your own yard that you can do where you think you're making a contribution to the environment. And for those of us who are on the council, as well as city staff, this coming Wednesday is City Hall campus cleanup. So you can show up and pick up a bag and some gloves, and we do the campus, and it's quite revealing some years, might I say. And if you're not able to come during the day on Wednesday, you can still talk to Sean and get your bag and your gloves and come some other day. There's plenty to pick up, usually along the back and particularly and around the pond, and we're responsible for that. So, and if the rest of you can't do anything else, take a bag with you when you walk through your neighborhood. You might be shocked, too, at what you're picking up in the ditches as you walk by. Secondly, I'd like to report on this District 623 informational meeting, sharing meeting that they have every quarter. That's the Roseville School District, and I was able to go in place of Mayor Abrams, and it was a wonderful meeting. They said it was the first time they had every community represented, and we also had 2 legislators there. So everybody reported on what's going on in their cities, and I'm happy to report that a lot of people were quite amazed at what we're doing in Maplewood, which made me smile. And I also want to report that of all those cities represented, we're the only ones who haven't acted on Tobacco 21, so we best move it along. And then the most important thing, the senior representative from the House of Representatives of Minnesota was there, and she said this is, of course, crunch time when everything will end up in conference committee, which means the governor, the Speaker of the House, Melissa Hortman, and the head of the Senate, Paul Gazelka. And she couldn't emphasize enough to us how we all need to call the governor, to call Representative Hortman, and call Senator Gazelka, because they are not anywhere close to each other, and something decent has to come out of that conference committee. The funding that they're talking about not giving could be catastrophe. First of all, the school districts are asking for 3% this year and 2% next, and all they've heard so far is 1.5%. 1 this year, 0.5% next. And they're already not operating in the black. So they're not meeting inflation, they're not running in the black. That's a disaster for all of us, our kids, and also our home values. So we need to tell them that this is an important thing for them to work out. It has to happen. They're going to start working on cutting things yet again for special education. They're also talking about telling the superintendents they better get going on what programs they're going to cut if they don't get their money. That's a disaster for our kids. So please make an effort to do that. And it's also could be bad for us. She said the transportation funding is a target, and the pressure is on. And as you know, we've already been kind of screwed, glue, tattooed, and overlooked on the East Metro. And we are very reliant on the 2 projects that are in the hopper right now for our housing moving forward, our businesses keeping up with the Joneses, shall we say. And she said it doesn't look good. So we could actually be stopped in our tracks. And we're so close. So again, Governor Walz, Melissa Hortman, and Paul Gazelka, it's very important to both schools and cities. That was not a happy announcement at the meeting, but I thought I should pass it on. And lastly, for us in Maplewood, May 1st is a special day, but it's not a very happy day. It's the 10th year since we lost Sergeant Joe Bergeron when he was murdered. And it's a very solemn day for us. We will never forget him, and we'll never forget it's happening. But I think it behooves all of us to pay special attention to that day, and I know we're having a memorial remembrance service, so would you ask the Chief to speak, please?
Mayor, members of the council, this will be the 9th, actually, time that we gather to remember Sergeant Joe Bergeron, who made the ultimate sacrifice on May 1st of 2010. One thing that'll be different about this year is this will be the first year that we will be presenting the Sergeant Joe Bergeron Community Service Award.
Oh, that's cool.
A committee of employees got together, and even though we want to remember his sacrifice, we also remember who Joe was. And for those that knew Joe, who had the privilege of knowing Joe, he was that cop that cared. He was in neighborhoods, he was talking to people, he was the person that half the town seemed to know. on a personal basis, and so the turnout that we get on May 1st for the celebration of his life and honoring his sacrifice is always a big turnout. So this award will be presented to one Maplewood police officer and one community member, since we want to recognize both our hardworking and heroic police officers, but also the people in our community that go the extra distance to make this a better, safer community. So I also think it's noteworthy that the Bergeron family has said that this award is with their blessing, and they were a part of the selection committee at their invitation. So we're excited about honoring Sergeant Bergeron and presenting this award, keeping his memory and sacrifice alive.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much.
Mayor.
Now, I just have a few items, everyone out there, and then we're going to get to the swearing in of our new officers. This morning, I was interviewed by Carol Levin out at our Nature Center, which was really very cool. They are doing a special, it's on Carol Levin's Sunrise, and they feature a different community. They call it Unzipped. What they do is they pick zip codes, and then they do a social media blast out there and ask questions. What do you like about Maplewood? About whatever community it is, but with Maplewood, what do you like about Maplewood? What are the hidden gems here? What are issues that we're facing? And they go out and they interview people, and they asked to interview me, and so I suggested the Nature Center, which I thought would be really great, that we could go out and see how beautiful that Nature Center is, and it was pouring down rain. So, but the funny thing too is that when it was scheduled the first time, we had that massive snowstorm. And so we canceled that, and so today it was the rainstorm, so we did it inside. But that's going to feature on Friday morning, and I think, I'm not going to tip you off on the other places that they went out to in Maplewood, but I think it's going to be kind of a fun little feature. So that's something to look forward to. I want to turn this over to Director Love, Public Works Director Love, because we did have a road closure in Maplewood, and because of the continued rain, we're still having issues with it. And if anyone's driving by on Minnehaha, they probably can see what's happening over there. So here's the answer. Director Love, do you want to tell us?
Yes, Mayor and Council, so as you know, we have a neighborhood street reconstruction project in that area. And during the design process, we identified a need for a sanitary sewer main repair. The sewer line runs along Minnehaha on the south side. Our contractor was out there last week starting that work, and when we dug down to the sewer main, we encountered very unstable soils. They were very wet, and so that repair didn't go as planned. We worked with St. Paul Regional Water as well as Ramsey County, and we came up with a plan, but it did require us to shut down the westbound lane of Minnehaha there. We're going to be dewatering, and this rain didn't help as well, and drying that out, stabilize it, rebuild the road, and then we'll be looking at maybe coming back in with a cured-in-place liner just to make sure, since we have this issue there, that we don't have it in the future when we're all done.
And what kind of timeline do we think we've got there?
Well, it really depends on how quickly we can get it dried out enough to work. So with this rain, it certainly put us back, but it is on our forefront for the contractor to do.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you for that. And so now you know why that road is closed. Today, I went to the Rice-Larpenter meeting with Roseville and St. Paul and Ramsey County, and I just want to announce that there is going to be a cleanup this Saturday. We're calling it the Rice-McCarrans Neighborhood Cleanup and Meetup. It's going to be at the Caribou Coffee on 1720 Rice Street, Saturday, April 27th from 9:30 to 11:30. And the community is going to get together over there, 3 communities and 1 county, which I think is really an amazing feat to get so many public entities working together on revitalizing a neighborhood. And so we're starting with a cleanup, and we talked today at the meeting about some really wonderful things that are going to be happening there as well, so stay tuned. You'll be seeing something called a parklet. I had never heard that word before, but there could be a parklet coming to the Rice-McCarrans neighborhood that is going to pop up there this summer, and we're going to have some fun activities over there. So look for that, and if you are looking for something to do and give back to the community, a cleanup is a great thing. Councilmember Juniman, that might go along with your Earth Week. Can I count on you?
A bag and gloves, what can I say?
Okay, I'll see you there. Also, I am part of the Regional Council of Mayors, and they sent out a letter of support that they are asking all the members from the Regional Council of Mayors to sign and send in to the governor and to the legislature, which follows up on what you were saying, Councilmember Juniman. So I brought this along to show our council members what it is that, that we're supporting. It's supporting comprehensive road and transit funding. And we don't really need a vote of the council. I just wanted to let you know. It is my intention. I'd like to ask your thoughts about this, but basically it's a letter to the legislature supporting enactment of a comprehensive and balanced transportation funding package in 2019 that permanently increases dedicated funding for transportation. It's something that we need to do, and we, if all of the mayors that are part of the Regional Council of Mayors sends in a letter like this, I think that it gets some more traction, that this is a really important thing that we need for our communities here on the east side. So council members, do I have a,
Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes.
okay,
Yes.
good enough. Then I will sign this, and we'll get this to the governor and the legislature in support of transportation funding. One last thing that I wanted to add is that our Maplewood Public Safety 2018 Annual Report is now on our website. I read this weekend, and I actually quoted this to KARE 11 today. So this is a wonderful report on our Public Safety Department, and it's a review of 2018 and all of the things that our police department is doing. So please check this out on the website. Very impressive. It's really nice to see how engaged our Public Safety Department is with our community. So Chief, thank you for that. And this is our first annual. I'll look forward to more in the coming years. So thank you for that. Okay, now we're finally at that point.
You forgot the
Like I
donuts.
said, swearing in.
Got the donuts.
Oh, I forgot, I'm sorry. How could I forget the donuts?
I don't know.
Hold on, with law enforcement, I won't make a joke about donuts, but I know you got some free donuts over there on Friday from Dunkin' Donuts because they gave some donuts for our police department. But Dunkin' Donuts just opened up, and I was very pleased to be the one that got to cut the ribbon at the new Dunkin' Donuts. It's over there on County Road D and Highway 61. And if you are a coffee lover, they have something brand new called Nitro Cold Brew Coffee that is probably the best coffee you can have in the summertime. And they have a drive-through. So there's a pitch for Dunkin' Donuts. Yeah. You'll know where I will be there this summertime. It was fun to see Dunkin' Donuts coming back into the city, so there we have it. We have our own. And now with that, now we can go to what you're all waiting to hear, and that is the swearing-in ceremony for our police officers. This is most memorable for council members. Whenever we swear in a public safety officer, either a police officer or someone from the fire department, it really is fun to see all the family members here and all the kids. So welcome, everyone. And Chief, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. It's my pleasure to once again introduce you and our community to our 4 newest police officers here for the city of Maplewood. You're about to hear some information on a variety of backgrounds and experiences that they bring to the community, but one common goal: to work together to ensure that Maplewood is an amazing and safe place to work, live, and visit. I'm encouraged by the number of family and friends that came out today. As you can see, there's other police officers, there's mothers and fathers, there's good friends, there's brothers and sisters, as well as their new partners in the Maplewood Police Department. I'm happy to report to the council that despite a national issue with recruiting for police officer positions, I'm happy that interest in being a Maplewood police officer remains very strong. And we continue to see the highest level of educated and experienced police officers who want to work in our city. Where I just came from a conference last week and people were saying maybe 1 dozen or 2 dozen applications. The city of Maplewood recently saw 140 applications. I did talk to a person who works for the Metro Transit PD, and she said, "Do you know that you stole 2 potential officers away from transit?" And I said, "That's only because I couldn't find 3. Sorry about that. That being said, we continue to move quickly and at times use innovative strategies to recruit our best possible police officers. Many of our new staff were in the hiring and recruiting process in other cities, and I'd like to compliment our HR department. There was one particular officer who was receiving multiple offers, and I was in Cabo San Lucas on my phone working with HR, making sure that we move quickly to get the best and brightest from Maplewood. So since we have 4 amazing people that I'm going to swear in tonight, we'll get started. There was a temptation, since there was 4, to swear them all in at the same time, but this is such a proud and humongous moment for each of them that I decided to not do that. So we're going to talk about them independently. We will swear them in one after another. They'll then do the badge pinning, and then they'll come up at the end for a photograph with council. So if Tuyur Zhang could step up. Our first officer is Tuyur Zhang. Tuyur was born in Fresno, California, but has lived in St. Paul most of his life. Tuyur graduated from college in 2016 with a 2-year degree in liberal arts and not knowing what he wanted to do professionally. Tuyur worked as an intern here in Maplewood at 3M Corporation for about 2 years as a workstation analyst and a help desk agent. He really didn't feel the fulfillment at that time working with computers, so he decided to do a career change. Tuyur sought advice from other police officers he knew, and he found that the law enforcement profession was what he was seeking to do. Tuyur enrolled in a few law enforcement courses at both Inver Hills Community College and Metro State University. His interest in law enforcement continued to grow, and he decided to gain some practical experience. In November of 2016, Tuyur became a community service officer for the Maplewood Police Department. While working for the Maplewood Police Department, he also worked as a personal care assistant for his father, who had suffered multiple illnesses. As a result, his schooling slowed down some during that time. In the fall of 2018, Tuyur applied for the Pathway to Policing program and was selected to be the applicant for the city of Maplewood. Tuyur finished his skills training in February of this year and successfully completed his post-test in March. Tuyur is excited to start his career as a Maplewood police officer, and he looks forward to being a contributing member to our team. So at this time, we'll call up Andrea Sint to administer his oath of office.
Can I have you stand over here? Raise your right hand. I, Tuyur Zhang,
I, Tuyur Zhang,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and of the state of Minnesota,
and of the state of Minnesota,
and faithfully discharge the duties
and faithfully discharge the duties
of the police officer in the city of Maplewood,
of the police officer of Maplewood
in the county of Ramsey,
in the county of Ramsey
and the state of Minnesota,
and the state of Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
I don't probably have to spend a lot of time telling the council or the assembled crowd about the importance of the badge. Our badge is special. It was custom made for us. It has the maple leaf on it to kind of represent Maplewood, but deeper than that, it's the badge is in the shape of a shield. And we are here to protect our community, to serve our community, to make sure that we are doing all that we can to make this a better and safer community. And at this time, Tuyur, is there anyone you would like to have come up and pin your badge on?
Yes, it's going to be my mother.
Okay, if you could step up. Tuyur will be badge number 478. I have to say that I've known Tuyer the entire 2 years I've been a chief here, and there's very few people that can brighten a room quite like Tuyer. He's an incredible young man, and we're very privileged to have him. Dan Peters, if you could step up, please. Our next officer is Dan Peters. Dan was born in St. Paul, Minnesota, and grew up in Cottage Grove. He loved playing multiple sports as a kid, including baseball, football, and soccer, but his real passion was ice hockey. During his junior year of high school, he left for the United States Hockey League and played for the Omaha Lancers throughout his senior year. Dan was sought after by many Division I colleges, but decided to play ice hockey at Colorado College under the guidance of former Gopher hockey coach Don Lucia. After 4 successful seasons at Colorado College, Dan was fortunate enough to play 5 years of minor professional ice hockey for teams in Philadelphia, Frankfurt, Germany, and Atlantic City, New Jersey. During his 5 years of minor league hockey, Dan trained in the Twin Cities during the summer months, and in his free time, he would conduct ride-alongs with his brother Brian, who was a Brooklyn Center police officer. I had the privilege of working with and mentoring Dan's brother Brian as he rose through the ranks of the Brooklyn Center Police Department during my time there. After seeing how police officers conduct themselves on the streets, Dan pursued a career in law enforcement in New Jersey and was employed by the borough of Stone Harbor for 10 years. Dan is hardworking, honest, principled, and prides himself on having positive police interactions with an emphasis on assisting the public to the best of his ability. Dan and his wife Lindsay reside locally, and they have 3 daughters, Madison, Logan, Lexi, and a spoiled dog named Riley. Please help me in welcoming Dan Peters to the police department.
I, Daniel Peters, do solemnly swear
I, Daniel Peters, do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United
the
States
Constitution of the United States
and of the state of Minnesota,
and of the state of Minnesota,
and faithfully discharge
and faithfully discharge
the duties of police officer
the duties of police officer
in the city of Maplewood,
in the city of Maplewood,
in the county of Ramsey,
in the county of Ramsey,
and the state of Minnesota,
and the state of Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
So, Dan's brother, Brian, has an illustrious career in Minnesota law enforcement. I believe you've asked him to pin on your badge.
Yes, sir.
Come on, I called you illustrious.
I did.
Our next officer is Noah Swatala. Noah was born in St. Cloud, Minnesota, and moved to Lakeville, Minnesota in 2003. Noah was homeschooled for most of his early education and graduated from MSU Mankato University in 2017. To start his law enforcement career, Noah applied for and became a community service officer in the city of Maplewood. Noah was excited to begin working in his chosen profession, and he became known for his positive attitude and willingness to help out no matter what we asked him to do. After working as a CSO for the past 8 months, Noah knew that he wanted to be a police officer from Maplewood because of all of the positive interactions he was having with the community and staff at the police department. In addition to working toward a career in law enforcement, Noah is also an avid sports fan. He played hockey and football most of his life and continues to enjoy watching all sports. A little-known fun fact about Noah is that he also writes short movie reviews in his spare time and enjoys watching films. I can tell you a personal observation of Noah was that in our last hiring process, Noah had come up to the top of the list, but we had multiple openings, and we let Noah know that we were going to be testing to the outside again. Noah came to work the next day with as positive an attitude, as helpful an attitude for the citizens of our community as he had the day before he got that notice. He is a young man who, like Tuyer, is extremely positive, a great guy to have around and an asset to our community, and we're very excited to have him on the team. So please help me in welcoming Noah to the Maplewood Police Department as a police officer.
Swatala, do solemnly swear
I, Noah Swatala, do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and of the state of Minnesota,
and of the state of Minnesota,
and faithfully discharge
and faithfully discharge
the duties of police officer
the duties of police officer
in the city of Maplewood,
in the city of Maplewood,
in the county of Ramsey,
and the county of Ramsey,
and the state of Minnesota,
and the state of Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Noah will be wearing badge number 481 for the Maplewood Police Department. And Noah, is there somebody that you would like to come up and pin the badge on?
Yes, my Father.
Mayor and members of the council, our last officer we're introducing tonight is Nicole Sparks. Come on up, Nicole. Nicole was born in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and spent 18 years of her life there. She attended Concordia University in St. Paul, where she played softball and graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree in sociology and criminal justice. While in college, she was the president of the Criminal Justice and Sociology Club and was able to double the membership and provide students with networking opportunities with surrounding jobs and agencies. In my initial interview with Nicole, it was evident she was a bright and engaging individual, but we also discussed the Vikings-Packers rivalry to make sure that we were going to be able to deal with that effectively. In March of 2017, Nicole accepted a job as a community service officer with the Metro Transit Police Department. At the end of her time there, Nicole was assigned to the Homeless Action Team, otherwise known as the HAT team. The HAT is focused on providing assistance to the hundreds of community members who utilize transit services as shelter. Nicole has gained indispensable knowledge about mental illness, chemical dependencies, and social work, and she plans to continue to use these skills in her career with the Maplewood Police Department. Nicole is looking forward to a career in Maplewood and is excited to work for a community that is ethnically diverse, promotes community engagement, and is constantly changing. Please join me in welcoming Nicole as a Maplewood police officer. And Nicole, is there somebody that you would like to have come up and pin the badge on?
Swearing in first.
We're gonna
Yeah,
swear
you're right.
first.
Hold on.
Raise your right hand. I, Nicole Sparks, do solemnly swear
I, Nicole Sparks, do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United
the
States
Constitution of the United States
and of the state of Minnesota,
and of the state of Minnesota,
and faithfully discharge
and faithfully discharge
the duties of police
the
officer
duties of police officer
in the city of Maplewood,
in the city of Maplewood,
in the county of Ramsey,
in the county of Ramsey,
and the state of Minnesota,
and the state of Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Now, Nicole, is there somebody that you'd like to have pin the badge on?
My mother.
All right, come on up, please. Members of the City Council, we have a person with 10 years of experience that used to play professional hockey. We have an officer that has helped the homeless population on our transit community. We've got CSOs that have faced adversity, even in hiring, and come back with a great attitude, wanting to serve people. And we have Tu-Year Zhang, who is, for years, worked very, very hard to become a police officer here, never giving up hope and never not doing anything that's been asked. And so we're very proud of our new staff. For those that came in for the swearing in, there is some refreshments that'll be offered back in the police department, some cake and coffee. We ask that everyone, consider going back and welcoming them as we have welcomed them tonight at the city council. And thank you for the time.
Can we do a photo?
Yes,
a
we're going
group
to
photo?
want the new staff to come up and get a photo with council. Yep.
Maybe we'll take a short little 2-minute recess and let everyone kind of filter out to go enjoy their cake.
Unless they want to hang around while we award bids for the next construction project. That might be
Deputy Prosecuting Attorney 2018 Annual Report. Gentlemen, do you want to join us at the microphone? Please introduce yourselves to the council.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, Joseph Kelly, I've got Kevin Beck and Martin Order both with me this evening. We're from Kelly and Lemons, your city prosecutors. First of all, thank you very much, Mayor, for the invitation to give our annual update that we give. What's been passed out before you is the annual report that we do with is, excuse me, a memo that lists off essentially all the cases that we've closed in the year 2018. There was one other attorney that's a prosecutor in our office who couldn't be here tonight. She had what was supposed to be a minor medical procedure last week that turned into more of a major medical issue. So she started with her office in January. Her name's Becca Duran. She's a certified criminal law specialist that we hired to help supplement our prosecution and also help to expand her base. So instead of just solely prosecution services, she's expanding her knowledge base by expanding in the civil area. So just to start off, what we do that we feel is a little unique for our firm is we track all of our cases individually upon closing. So what's been handed off to you is the different categories that we place all of the cases in, and what this reflects is for all of calendar year 2018, all the cases that have been closed. What this doesn't reflect are warrants. This doesn't reflect cases that we charged out as formal complaints or by citation that are still open. What these show are cases that have been closed in 2018, and I should note that one of the cases that was closed in 2018 was a 2005 case that was outstanding on a warrant for 13 years. So, just as background, I serve as for all the suburban prosecutors as the suburban representative on the Family Violence Coordinating Council, along with Commander Quam also serves on that. Martin is the chair of the Joint Prosecution Group for all of Ramsey County, so he is the chair for all the city and the county, so it's County Attorney Choi and Martin run those meetings as well. Like I said, what we do is we manually track all of our cases, which not every contractor or even in-house prosecution service does so, but we also make sure that we like to cross-reference to ensure that our numbers are accurate. Just for way of perspective, for 2018, the county attorney's office, which handles juvenile and all felony level and certain gross misdemeanor cases, they closed 251 cases in 2018. For all of those that were assigned as city attorney cases, which include petty misdemeanor all the way up through gross misdemeanor, there were 6,268 cases that were closed in 2018 that arose from the city of Maplewood. And of those, as you'll see, 1,058 were criminal mandatory cases. So those are misdemeanor and above cases that require a court appearance. And 5,210 that are criminal non-mandatory. So those could be misdemeanor cases that are on the payable offense. Many traffic tickets are on the payable offense list. Those are types of tickets that you, instead of making a mandatory appearance, you can pay a fine instead. And those were resolved anywhere from, they could have been cases that started as ours and ended up being a certified conviction because they failed to appear, or they could have been resolved by them meeting with a hearing officer. So of those 6,268, we specifically had 1,371 cases that we were physically present to close out cases in 2018. In comparison, as you note, of the cases that were referred to our office for prosecution, we only declined 1.1% of all the cases that were sent when compared to the cases that were actually charged out either through citation or formal complaint. We gave a little bit more detail. The reason that we declined some of them are that they should have been reviewed for county attorney purposes, could be because it should have been a felony or because it was a county attorney type offense, like a fifth-degree crim sex conduct. One was we declined because basically at the time that we were making our charging decision, a Rule 20 on one of our other cases from the city of Maplewood with the same defendant. He was found incompetent by a court. And then only one was due to, the remaining were for lack of evidence. So the way that we approach our prosecution is, at our level, it's twofold. One, it's problem solving. So it's addressing a problem at its earliest stage possible. And that's anything from code violations, which may not be the sexiest when it comes to the court, but we recognize how important that is to the community, because if it reaches our desk as a citation, we know that there's been a large number of opportunities that the citizens have had to fix the problem. So with those, what we're attempting to do is fixing it with more of the carrot, the stick approach as opposed to the carrot approach, which had been proven unsuccessful up to that point. And that includes DWIs, so first-time DWI offenses. The idea is to get them evaluated for chemical dependency evaluations and get them treated to ensure that they don't pose a risk again in the future. And then qualified domestic violence-related offenses, which is it's the type of offense that we deem as the most serious because it's one that we get in on usually not at an early stage. It's usually gotten to a boiling point, or it's at least early enough that we can intervene as fastly as possible. What we do that's somewhat unique is for all qualified domestic violence related offenses, we personally serve upon all victims of those crimes with a subpoena for both a pretrial and a trial. So we don't like to wait until trial time to try to get face-to-face contact. We personally serve them to get them at a pretrial so we can ensure that we have set dedicated time to sit down with each and every victim in these cases. And it helps evaluate the strength of the cases as well as we continue to go on in the prosecution. So as far as our disposition rates, the overall conviction rate, where there was actually a guilty plea, was 71% for 2018. The remaining was 8% for a continuance for dismissal, which is essentially we're staying prosecution for a period of 1 or more years. And if they pay prosecution costs that are supposed to go to the city, as long as they remain law-abiding and any other programs that would be required, community service that we may require, it would get dismissed and they would get the benefit of having a clean record. 9% are referred to diversion. The largest reason for diversion is theft, is what we see, theft from the mall. It's an opportunity for a program that's fairly intensive. It includes a fine, it includes a number of classes, and it includes community work service. The only people that qualify for those types of offenses are people that don't have any criminal history whatsoever and that they've never participated in diversion. And we like those a lot because it's generally people who it's their first negative contact with law enforcement, and it's an opportunity to get them off whatever path that they're on and correct the ship, so to speak. And then if you include those two into our conviction rate, it brings it to 88%, which obviously brings our total dismissal rate to just under 12%, about 11%. So DWIs, 99% conviction rate. There were 2 cases that were not convictions for DWIs. Both of them were dismissed by the judge. One we recharged and they were convicted. It was based upon a motion that was granted that we disagreed with as far as timing, and it didn't comply with the rules, so we recharged and got a conviction. The other one was for a lack of probable cause. It was not a Maplewood Police Department case. It was a neighboring jurisdiction on a DWI patrol where the judge just found there wasn't a reasonable articulable suspicion for a stop. And excluding DWIs, though, the overall conviction was 68%. Our QDVRO conviction rate was 74%. So as you can see, we put a focus on our DWIs, or our QDVRO, the domestic-related offenses, and ensuring that, number one, that these people get into the system as quickly as possible and they get evaluated. So that would include anger management and following a chemical dependency evaluation and following any recommendations of, or mental health treatment as well. There's two types of approaches that we see most frequently on QDVROs. Disorderly conduct is oftentimes a catch-all type offense that people are requesting to plead to. It's on a case-by-case basis. So if there's, generally speaking, if it's a physical assault that takes place, we're adamant to ensure that we get our QDVRO enhanceable conviction. When it ends up being loud and boisterous and there are fact issues that may come up, some evidentiary issues, we take that along with what we give the most weight to be quite honest, is input from the victim. We work hand in hand with Tubman to ensure that we're getting as much information and getting the wishes of the victim expressed to us. It should be noted, though, that we make it quite clear to the victims that they're not the ones pressing charges, because oftentimes the pressure that they may be feeling from the outside is that they need to just drop the case. And oftentimes when we reassure them at the pretrial hearing that it is not in fact their charge to dismiss, that they get input but not final say, you can usually see the sense of relief and come off their shoulders and off their face. And they are then turned back into identifying what we need to do is fix the pattern of abuse before it gets much worse and violent. Because the last thing we want is for an opportunity to intervene in a relationship where there may be violence taking place. And if that violence escalates, then we look at ourselves as saying we missed an opportunity. So we never want to miss those opportunities to start to correct wrongs. The other items that you'll see as far as percentage-wise for our continuous for dismissals and ultimately dismissals, some of those on the code areas, the reason why you'll see those is where they've actually entered into agreements with the city using our stick to help then clean up those code issues. And before we dismiss any code issues or enter a continuous for dismissal, we always ensure that we're working with the city hand in hand to ensure that whatever the problem is that existed is already remedied or in the midst of being remedied. And finally, getting back to the QDVROs for the conviction rates, the 66%, which I would put those numbers up against anybody of convictions for enhanceable convictions for QDVRO-related offenses. And of note for those dismissed cases, which the thing that is probably most important is what you'll see is that one defendant on here, he had 9 separate QDVRO cases. 9 separate cases. So 6 of the dismissals were from 6 of those 9 were dismissed, but 3 were convictions. The reason we wanted 3 is it takes 2 convictions for a 10-year period to be enhanced to a felony. For us, we wanted the third additional because it's now the victim was on board. And we were getting everything that we could out of it and keeping them on probation and accountable for the near future. So the remaining, the other 13% were dismissed because the defendant was found incompetent to stand trial. So that's one thing that over the last decade that I think all of us have noted for basically the past, I'd say 24 months, there's been a significant increase in finding of defendants of incompetent. A number of people have looked at that as alarming and frustrating from the prosecution side. Our end is it's a recognition that mental health maybe did actually come into play, and if these individuals did not actually truly comprehend what they were doing, or they can't aid in their own defense, then it is appropriate for a finding of incompetence. Our frustration rests with once that happens, it's out of our hands, and it goes to the county on the civil side for a civil commitment. What we're finding more frequently is not just the Rule 20, but then also that they are not a danger to themselves or others, so they're released without any further treatment requirements. But with that said, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but, but we're here open to answer any questions that you have about our report for the year.
Thank you for your report. I think the numbers are very helpful for us. I am curious about the 2005 case that was closed out 13 years later. Can you kind of fill us in a little bit about that?
Sure. That 2005 case was a theft. It was a misdemeanor theft case out of the mall. And he was on a warrant status for that entire time. The reason he ended up turning himself in was there was I believe there was an ICE warrant for him as well. And he ended up getting picked up in a different county, transported to Ramsey County, and we resolved it. He pled to, it was a petty misdemeanor theft from Sears that was, I think it was about $13 worth of screws or nails, but his attorney actually requested to resolve it faster rather than what we would have offered on something like that with a clean record would have been diversion, but that would have extended his stay at Sherburne County Correctional Facility where his ICE hold was taking place. So we did a plea by mail over by e-filing everything and faxes between myself and the attorney, which ultimately allowed him to get released from Sherburne County, released from his ICE hold. So he had been a law-abiding citizen for obviously those 13 years, had a job and a family in I believe it was in Oakdale, if I remember correctly.
Okay, thank you. Council members, any other questions or comments? Councilmember Smith.
There we go. I'm just wondering when he earns his matching tie.
Yeah, Councilmember Smith, that was actually brought up as when he walked in, he said, "You guys didn't give me the memo," so.
He got the backpack already, but next is the tie, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. No other questions, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor, Council.
Nice work, Joe.
Okay, the next agenda item is actually a follow-up from our last meeting and the issue that was raised by the difficulty at the myth. Chief Nadeau, this is yours to talk about, so I'll turn it over to you. What the council did, just for people who are maybe watching this, is that the council had acknowledged that there was an issue at the myth and that we directed the chief to meet with, the chief and his staff, to meet with staff from the myth and work out an action plan so that we can prevent any further criminal sexual conduct or shootings or overdoses at the myth. And we asked the chief to come back to us with an update on where things are and to make sure that we have a clear timeline before we can, as to when we can expect this action plan. So Chief, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. We did meet with representatives of the myth on April 12th, which would have been Friday of the week that they were here with the council. At the meeting was police representatives as well as Mr. Jessen, who was the manager at the myth. He had a couple members of his staff, their attorney, and their security consultant, Mr. Rich Stanek. We talked about the council's concerns, which I think that they are aware of. They were probably aware at the meeting, but we memorialized those in writing for them. We then talked about the operational action plan that had been used at the Stargate, I believe a couple of years ago, and they were given that as a template, as well as some other recommendations that we asked them to review. In the course of the meeting, they did talk about, a reasonable timeline for their security consultant to be able to make observations, and in fact, they said that they were asking for an extended timeline so that their security consultant could actually be there when several events were happening and make recommendations based on crowds and how people moved in the venue and other things. So initially, we had wanted to bring something back to the council for action within 30 days, but they indicated that they needed at least 30 days just to make their observations. So we agreed that 60 days, or June 12th of 2019, would be the outside date. We currently have a meeting scheduled with them for May 9th for them to bring forward all of their security consultants' recommendations. At that time, we will go over those recommendations. We will go over the ideas that have been utilized at the Stargate and other things that police staff would have specific to the myth itself. We have followed up both in person and in writing and informed them that the City of Maplewood has every expectation that the myth live operate in a way that is safe for their patrons in the surrounding community, and that incidents of violence or sexual violence, alcohol or drug overdose, and other associated disorderly or riotous behavior on the parts of crowds was not going to be acceptable, and we asked them to take every precaution. I would also add, Mayor, that we've had additional correspondence with them. I've heard from a number of people about a act that's coming up within the next 30 days. We expressed our concerns about that act to the myth in writing and asked them to take whatever actions they could to ensure patron safety, as this particular act has had some issues around the United States. And so we wanted to make sure that they were aware of that and taking whatever actions they deem necessary to make sure that it's a safe environment for all.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Chief. I understand they need some time, and I get that. Was there any conversation about perhaps some things that are just low-hanging fruit that we could direct them to now? I'm thinking things like offering bottle service in the bar, or some of those things that are just, I think, asking for trouble in that range that they could suspend sooner rather than later, just as a matter of good faith and good course, as we approach some of these shows coming up.
Chief?
Mayor, members of the council, we did discuss some things like bottle service. They said that they hadn't done bottle service, I believe, with the exception of their New Year's Eve event for the last year or two. Again, they claim that they've made some improvements, like they no longer have something maybe called club night, and they've seen other issues and they've tried to take steps. We talked about underage drinking. We talked about drinking to excess. We talked about the number of drug overdoses that they'd had. And so there was discussion about some of those items. And again, I think that the folks from the myth certainly understand the community's concerns. We had essentially pages of recommendations, and so we shared all of those recommendations with the myth and asked them to study them and be fully prepared to discuss each of our recommendations in addition to what their consultant brought forward as steps. And so whether it was better training for their liquor serving staff, whether it was not allowing people who appeared to be intoxicated into the venue itself, we made some recommendations about closing down the smoking area. So once you get into the venue, there's a designated smoking area outside where we understand that there's been regular drug use, and so we advised them, we thought it would be helpful for them to close that off. So we did have some of those discussions, but as far as agreements to actual details, we wanted them to come back fully prepared to discuss the entire slate of issues that they were recommending. And at the council's direction, we told them that those would at some point be memorialized into this operational action plan.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Smith, another follow-up?
Thank you, Mayor. When we were challenged with the issues at the Stargate, we had empowered the chief with some special emergency powers, I believe, to be able to suspend their operations as he saw fit, should an emergency require that. Is that something that we have to wait for the OAC to be able to do, or is that something that would be helpful for us to do for the chief sooner than that?
I think that is something for City Attorney Beatty.
Madam Mayor and Council, I would recommend that we not do that prematurely. That's a pretty tough position for the city, and I think to put the police chief in. I would prefer, I think, to wrap something like that into the overall action plan, if that's an appropriate piece of it.
My concern is for this upcoming show, and if things look like they're getting out of control and the myth is not looking like they're going to do the right thing, is there something that, I don't recommend the chief do that, but do we need to give him the ability in case?
I think the chief already has the ability to do that.
He does.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes, I mean, I think what you're talking about is some sort of extraordinary step. But the police obviously have the full range of powers, and I think based on what they heard here last time from the 3 council members who were here and what they heard in the meeting from the police, they have to be very aware that they are being watched and that they are going to be held to a high standard. And the police have the right to do what they always do, which is take appropriate action, and I'm sure that the police will.
Thank you, Mr. Beatty, and for what it's worth, from my perspective, you have my full support in doing what you need to do to keep our community safe, and I know you will, so thank you.
Councilmember Knutson.
Thank you, Mayor. I unfortunately missed the last meeting. I was able to watch it on the web, standing up and cheering for my council members. I totally support everything that was said at the council, and I think it was pretty clear in the public service, public safety letter that between now and when the plan is done, it's pretty unequivocal that they need to meet safety requirements, and I think that's pretty clear. I support that 100%.
Thank you. Councilmember Juneman.
I guess mine's a variation on Brian's question. Having also heard that at least one of the shows that's coming up is before their June 12th deadline, I just want to be sure that we've made it not just possible for the chief, but that we've said, whatever you need to do, you do, and that they're aware that that's been said. Because time gaps can sometimes be filled with disaster. And so, you know, I just want to be sure we've not only covered our bases, but we've made it abundantly clear publicly that the police chief has our full support in doing whatever needs to be done. And if that means pulling the plug, that's what it means. So I don't know if I have to do anything more or not, but I think it should at least be on record that that's what we've said.
Chief, I think that we have made that clear. Would you agree with that?
Mayor, members of the council, I believe I am clear that I enjoy your support, and if there's things that we need to do prior to this operational action plan being enacted that affect public safety at the Myth and its patrons in the surrounding area, that I certainly feel clearly your direction that we should take whatever reasonable steps would be necessary.
The uneasiness, I think, that I'm feeling, and that I think my fellow council members are feeling, is that there is this period of time between now and June 12th, and we're very aware that there is a group that is going to be playing there that, according to social media and all the links and news reports, that this group has had some very serious problems in other venues in other cities. And, you know, from my perspective, this is, I think I said it before, that this is an important entertainment venue in our community, and we certainly want to support them. However, we want them to contribute to our community. We do not want them to be a drain on our public resources, nor do we want that to be an unsafe venue where people are can be subject to crimes, overdoses, you know, all sorts of misconduct over there. That's just not going to be okay. You know, during this interim period of time, based on what we're hearing from our city attorney, I think we're in a good position. I think that maybe, Chief, you could carry that message to to the employees or the staff at the Myth that we are very concerned about this and that it is unequivocal that they will address this in a very professional way and that they will be very proactive in what they do between now, for any group, between now and June 12th. And no later than June 12th, I think the council is anxious to see the operational action plan that the council will actually vote on, that the Myth will be expected that they're going to sign it, and I'm going to sign it as the mayor. And hopefully we can help them succeed in our community. I think that's really what the goal is here. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree 100%. And I'd like to, we've been burned on this before. I mean, that awful shooting that happened at the Stargate happened during one of these interim periods, right? There was an action plan in place at that point, but it was during, it wasn't in the absence of a conversation. So I think there's some trepidation based on that. And I also want to say really clearly that concert venues and nightclubs are not inherently dangerous things. You don't hear about these sorts of incidents at First Avenue or the Medina Ballroom or umpteen other large-scale professional nightclubs. It's about running a tight operation, having good security, having good bar staff, trained security, and running a tight ship. So I would love to have a great concert venue that is well-trained and run professionally. I don't think it's an inherently bad thing. Just, we've been down this road before, and so I think we're all a little gun-shy on this front.
I think that was a pun.
I didn't mean to be, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Okay. Any other comments before we move on to the next agenda item? Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that update, and we'll look forward to the operational action plan. The resolution for commission reappointments, City Manager Coleman.
Thank
What
you.
is yours?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Abrams, members of the council. There is a list of commissioners whose terms expire on April 30th of this year. The commissioners were asked to fill out an assessment to evaluate their time on the commission and to provide input to the council. I hope you've read those. I usually do have some insights that are worth reading about. The commissioners approved for reappointment will serve a 3-year term ending on April 30th, 2022. There is a motion to approve the attached resolution on packet page 23 of 184. There are 6 commissioners whose terms will expire on April 30th. 4 of them are seeking reappointed as indicated in your report. The 2 on the Park and Recreation Commission will be assigned or appointed at a future meeting. We're still waiting to hear from one of the incumbents. On the Community Design Review Board, we have Anand Shankar, who's been a member since 1994. And I must say he's a very valuable member of that board. And then Bruce Thompson, who we just appointed back in October. On Heritage Preservation Commission, we have Richard Curry, who's been a member since 2004, and Margaret Fett, who is a newer member appointed at 11/27 of 2017. So, Mayor and Council, we will need a motion to approve the resolution appointing the 4 folks whose term will then expire on April 30th, 2022.
Council, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Niblett, seconded by Smith. Any further discussions? Councilmember Judeman.
Thank you. First of all, I second what the manager said. Anath Shankar since 1994, and he is meticulous. He has been known to go to places with his tape measure to make sure the paint band is the right width. So we know we need him. And also Rick Brandon, who is not re-upping on the Parks and Recreation Commission, has been there a very long time. We really appreciate, he's way back from the open space days, so we really appreciate his contributions. I'm sorry to hear that he's moving out, but perhaps he's retiring and moving out. So then I should be jealous, I guess. But
I will add that, as the mayor and formerly as a council member, we really rely on our commissioners, and I marvel at their selfless dedication to helping us make decisions in our city. So thank you, all the people that serve as our commissioners. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda, does anyone want to highlight anything?
Yes. Hate to do it to you, but I'd like to highlight number 2 and number 3
Okay,
and number 8.
okay. I'm also going to, I have an addition or a modification for number 8.
And then I just have one quick question on number 5.
Okay, so do we need a motion first before we go through these, or can we do it after, do the motion after?
Motion after.
Okay, so let's do number 2, which is the resolution of support for Minnesota Energy Education Grant. Who is that? That will be
Mike, I think.
City Manager Coleman. Oh, Mike Martin.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. City staff is applying for a grant for $4,250 from the Minnesota Department of Commerce Energy Division. This grant would be used to pay a partnership with a city partner, Pale Blue Dot, to research citywide rooftop solar potential, research Maplewood solar site assessment examples, create solar education and training modules, and compile education presentations. So these materials would be developed. We would work with our communications staff, so our branding is on point with that, and would be used at further outreach and educational opportunities into the future.
Thank you. This is really great for
Yeah.
solar energy, and there's no matching funds. So this
Very
is,
nice.
and this is one of the reasons where we are in the Green Step City program. And one of the reasons when I was listing these things off at that meeting last week, people were going, wow. It's like, yeah, wow. And it's also because we have put an energy and money where our mouths are.
Okay, thank you. Number 3, City Manager Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This item is a request to recommend action for cooperative funding agreement with the Rice Street and Larpenteur Avenue Gateway Alliance Consulting Services. So this is the cities of Roseville, St. Paul, Ramsey County, and Maplewood who have a mutual interest to identify critical redevelopment and reinvestment opportunities for our Rice and Larpenteur Avenue Gateway Corridor. So this funding agreement will memorialize in writing respective obligations and funding for professional services for the second phase of the project. I know that Mayor Abrams has been attending the meetings, and she mentioned to me that one of the things that was set out up front was although Maplewood is only contributing 7% of the cost of these consulting services, we all evidently have an equal vote at the table, which I thought was, that group has really done well working together. We're looking forward to that. So what we're asking, the city of Maplewood is asking, or we're asking the council to contribute $10,000 towards this agreement to provide professional services to go through facilitation and look for action items and things to begin doing some projects in that area.
And Mayor Fragmate,
Sure, Kathy.
there's also says that we received a grant from the Urban Land Institute. This is from the national
ULI,
office
yeah.
of ULI. And they actually had people from the national team come here and visit that corridor. So this is a big deal, and it will be, it's wonderful for the area, but it's also wonderful, all three of us that are participating. We're making some splashes nationwide.
Right. And I would also add, I was at the meeting today, and Ramsey County is also a player in this, and Ramsey County is also bringing forward money. And we are getting a grant from McKnight for this project as well. So I think a lot of people are paying attention to this because it is 3 cities, 1 county, but it is 1 community. And it's really encouraging to see how everyone is coming together. So I'm excited about what's
cool.
going to happen there. Number 5.
I just would like to verify, because remember, this was kind of a source of temporary chaos when they came to us, and then we asked them to Health Partners to have a meeting with the neighbors, and everything went fine. And I like the fact that they have a kind of a continuing commitment to having to meet with the school down there. And I just think it shows that when people in a neighborhood, or businesses, or in this case, the school speaks up, everybody comes out ahead. And we know that there have been no issues. So it's, if you tell people what you're about, and it's a valiant effort, everybody's fine.
Very good. And number 8?
I think that's probably Mike too, isn't it?
I wanted to talk about that as well, but I think
Okay.
you highlighted it.
Yes, I highlighted it.
Okay. Did you want to say something about it first?
I just think it says something about people are looking at us as a place to do what needs to be done. And that was another topic that came up last Thursday, that there are some cities, not mentioning any names, but one is Arden Hills, they're having difficulty fitting it in. And so it says it's an attitude about an area, and we seem to have the better attitude, if I might say, and that we are seen as willing to do this, and when we do a project, it's a good one. We have everything from Sibley Cove up there to the family units on Frost. You know, once you do something that makes a splash, that's positive, and everybody comes out ahead, it just gets better. But I thought maybe Mike or Melinda could just go through a little bit what this is about.
I'll let Mike cover that.
Mayor and council, staff was approached by MWF Properties about a potential project that would bring 99 affordable units, apartment complex to vacant land that's just southwest of County Road C and White Bear Avenue. There is a representative from MWF Properties in the audience to see how the conversation and discussion goes tonight. They are looking at possible funding sources from Ramsey County's Home Grant Program and Minnesota Housing Tax Credits. And to do both of those programs or make applications, they do need resolutions of support from the local community, and that's what you have before you tonight. In addition to the resolution of support for the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency, they also request a separate letter that would be signed by the mayor of Maplewood. This is not a commitment in terms of these dollars are going to be attributed to this project. What we would be demonstrating tonight is that the city is committed to working with the developer on this project, and there's an acknowledgement of there is TIF potential there, but those details and the vetting of that project would still to come.
Thank you, and I'd like to point out that that piece of property has been looked at before and then passed over.
Yeah.
So it has potential, and like I said, this shows that we're a community that's willing to look at least. It's the only reason I wanted to highlight it.
Thank you. It certainly goes along with our plan for the future of our city in terms of affordable housing. Now, the one point that I brought up about this, since I am the one that's going to be signing this, I wanted to make sure that the letter was accurate. And what I propose changing is the second sentence that says, right now it says, the city intends to process an application for a tax increment financing district supporting the project. If you look on page 104 of, it's actually the resolution. The resolution, I think, is worded better. I don't like the words intends to process an application. I think, right, and so what I would propose is to amend that to mirror what we have in the resolution, which I do agree with, that we will endeavor to work with MWF Properties to facilitate tax increment financing so that the two of them mirror each other. I think that that's better wording, more accurate, and I feel more comfortable phrasing it that way. Okay. So with that, let's see, that was the last one. We need a motion.
I move approval of the consent agenda, items G1 through 11.
With the amendment that I just suggested?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, with the amendment. So we have a motion by Juniman. Seconded by Smith. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Consent agenda passes. We have no public hearings, no unfinished business. We do have 2 items under new business, the Gladstone Phase 3 corridor improvements. Let's see. Mr. Love.
This is the Steve Love Show again.
Yes, it is.
Mayor and council, good evening. Apparently, I'm very fond of agenda reports with lots of motions for you. So tonight's report does have 3 separate motions for you to consider. The first one is a resolution receiving bids and awarding construction contract. So on April 5th, we held a bid opening. We had 6 bids. They ranged from $3.99 million up to $5.64 million. Our engineer's estimate was $4.17 million, so the low bid by Vite and Company Incorporated, it was about 4.5% below our engineer's estimate. Vite has not done a project in the city of Maplewood recently, but they have done projects similar to other local agencies and the Twin Cities metro area. Both staff and the city's consultant, Kimley Horn, recommend awarding a construction contract to Vite and Company in the amount of $3,992,101.65. If the council does move forward with awarding a construction contract, then the next item is a resolution for entering into a grant agreement with MnDOT. This is the Local Road Improvement Grant. As a reminder, this is a grant that is helping fund about $1 million, well, not about, $1 million of the project. It's a standard agreement that MnDOT has, so I know our city attorney has reviewed it and does recommend proceeding forward with it as it is. The last item is construction phase services. So typically, we've been doing 2 street projects in-house, both design, construction management, and staking. This would be, just as a reminder, this project has been accelerated because we were successful in getting a little over $2 million in grant money, both from the Local Road Improvement Grant as well as Ramsey Washington Metro Watershed District. So we're, just like the design, we need to rely on our consultants to help us with the construction management, project administration, inspections, material testing, surveying, as well as built drawings. So this would be an agreement with our consultants, Kimley Horn and Associates. They also did the design work, and staff does recommend that. Overall, the project had a budget about $5.249 million. Based on our current expenditures through the design process, as well as construction phase services and awarding the contract and a 10% contingency, we're estimating the project will come in about $5,088,000, so under the project budget, but it does still leave us even some additional room if there are any change orders or anything like that. So with that, staff is available for any questions.
Council, any questions for Director Love? Then we have 3 motions tonight. Let's start with the motion to approve the resolution receiving bids and
I
awarding.
move approval of the resolution receiving bids and awarding construction contract for the Gladstone Phase 3 Corridor Improvement City Project 16-18 to Vite and Company Incorporated.
Is there a second? Moved by Juniman, seconded by Smith. The motion to approve the resolution receiving bids and awarding construction contract for the Gladstone Phase 3 Corridor Improvements, City Project 1618 to Vite? Is it Vite?
Vite.
Vite, I'm sorry, Vite and Company, Inc. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
I further move to approve the resolution approving a local road improvement program, that's a LRIP, grant agreement with Minnesota Department of Transportation.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Smith. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And finally, number 3.
Okay, I will further move to authorize the use of Kimley Horn and Associates for construction phase services and further authorize the mayor and city manager to sign the attached work order with Kimley Horn.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Smith. Motion to authorize the use of Kimley Horn and Associates for construction phase services and further authorize the mayor and city manager to sign the attached work order with Kimley Horn and Associates. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes as well.
The end is ahead in Gladstone.
We can see the end of Gladstone
We
coming
can.
our way. I think that's wonderful.
Yes.
Okay, and finally, the last agenda item is the city manager annual performance employment agreement. Mr. Funk, do you want to start off with that, please?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Tonight's last business item is, you point out, Madam Mayor, is the city manager annual performance evaluation. There's really two pieces to this conversation that's noted on the agenda and then in your staff report. The first is to summarize conclusions of the work session discussion earlier this evening. I'll get into that in just a second. And then the second is to consider any changes to the city manager contract as a result of the performance review. The first one, as I mentioned, relates to summarizing tonight's closed session. As I think noted earlier in the workshop, the legislature authorized you as a governing body to close meetings to discuss personnel data about public employees, including performance evaluations. And that's what you did with City Manager Coleman. You closed the meeting here at the workshop. That workshop was again this evening, Monday, April 22nd. State statute then, and that's 13D05 subdivision 3A, then requires the public body to summarize its conclusions regarding the evaluation of City Manager Coleman at its next open meeting. So that's what you're here this evening to do. It's recommended that Mayor Abrams spend a few minutes summarizing that performance review, and I'm going to turn it over to her in a second. And I just want to go a step further and to say that state law also defines what is summary. And so Mayor Abrams is going to spend a few minutes going through some of the competencies that are in the performance review and to summarize those as well. And then I think the mayor will likely ask City Manager Coleman to also highlight some of the goals that are being established for next year. The second part of then tonight's, and so no action is required on that, I should stipulate that. That is just a summary, so no action or formal action is required by you, the council. The second item then is after you do the summary, the mayor will then likely turn to a conversation about possible changes to the employment agreement between the city of Maplewood and the city manager. Included in your council packet is the current contract. There have been 2 amendments to that contract since 2015 when the contract was first signed. So you'll have that as a point of reference. There are 2 recommendations being made by the Development Committee. And it should be noted that the Development Committee is Mayor Abrams and Councilmember Smith. They were selected earlier this year, actually on the first meeting in January when the council selects its committees for the year. Those 2 are on the Development Committee. The Development Committee recently met and they reviewed the performance review form that we use. And in that form that will be highlighted here in a second by the mayor contains competencies and we get into goal setting. And so the Development Committee met to review the forms that were completed by the council at that time, and then also staff did have some input into the city manager's performance. The Development Committee also then asked myself, the Assistant City Manager and HR Director, to do a compensation study. And so we've spent some time looking at comparables and market comparables, external market comparables for the position of City Manager and compensation related to it. And then the Development Committee has also had a conversation with the City Manager about what potential changes might look like. And so Mayor Abrams will highlight those recommendations that are contained in the staff report. One of those recommendations relates to just compensation itself, and then the second is a language change as well. So with that, Madam Mayor, I'll stand for any questions. Otherwise, I'll turn it back over to you for the first part of tonight's agenda item, which is the summary.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Funk? Okay, then in terms of meeting the statutory requirement for a summary of the evaluation that was completed, just for the record, City Manager Coleman was reviewed by department heads and also by council members. And she was evaluated based on, well, she did a self-evaluation, and then she was evaluated on her problem-solving skills, and it was determined that she exceeded the position requirements. She was evaluated based on her attitude, and she either met or exceeded position requirements in that category. In terms of professionalism, she either met or exceeded the position requirements for professionalism. Creativity, she was evaluated on her creativity, bringing new ideas to the organization, and she exceeded all the position requirements in that category. She was evaluated concerning authentic communication, and she either met or exceeded the criteria under that category. She was evaluated concerning her attention to detail, and she either met or exceeded the position requirements for that category. I know it's a little redundant, but we'll go through it.
There's not that many categories.
There's not that many categories, but it was a very good evaluation. Okay, results-oriented, she either met or exceeded the position requirements. Customer and resident focus, she either met or exceeded the position requirements. Facilities change, she exceeded the position requirements. For managing performance, she exceeded position requirements. For integrity, she either met or exceeded position requirements. Under fiscal and business management, she either met or exceeded position requirements. Strategic planning, she either met or exceeded position requirements. For relations with elected members of the governing body, the mayor and the council, she either met or exceeded position requirements. For reports and communication, she either met or exceeded reports and communication. Organizational management and staffing, she exceeded position requirements. And then employee goals. Ms. Coleman, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can report the goals that you have identified for yourself and in 2019.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. Thank you so much for the feedback on my review. I really appreciate it and take that very seriously and really appreciate your partnership this past year. The goals for this year include the completing the engagement process for the implementation of the rental housing program, oversee the zoning changes required with the implementation of the 2040 comp plan, which will be, there might be some hurdles there, but I think it's something we have to do, and that'll be before you most of the summer. Hire the new community development director, which has been done, and we're looking for an emphasis on someone with skills and redevelopment, particularly with an eye on the North End study. Continue the relationship with the Rice-Larpenter Vision Plan implementation as resources allow. Complete contract negotiations with our 7 bargaining units. Complete the community engagement process for the fire station location and possible rebuild, and that is about to kick off here in the next few weeks. On a professional note, attend the 2019 Gallup Strength Summit in June in Omaha, Nebraska. Conduct an employee survey at the end of 2019, and conduct training with all of our city advisory boards on how to conduct meetings, open meeting laws, that kind of thing. Revise our content for better uniformity and streamlining the reporting features related to the city's strategic plan, which we are well on our way there, and also monitor the transportation projects, including the Gold Line and Rush Line.
Thank you very much for that. I think that concludes the summary of the evaluation that was conducted for Ms. Coleman.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the third amendment to the city manager employment agreement and authorize the mayor and assistant city manager, HR director to execute said amendment on behalf of the city.
It's a motion by Mr. Smith and seconded by Ms. Juniman. Any further discussion? No further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. There are no award of bids, and at this point, council members, we are adjourned.